Welcome to another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm-Up Sessions podcast. My name is Mark Katrovsky, and
I guess names again. We had this on the last episode about names, but welcome, folks. My name is Sergey Katrovsky.
And today we have our first guest of 2023, one of a handful of guests. Hopefully, we'll have more folks on the pod. And we have Andrew. Andrew, thanks for jumping on the podcast with us. Awesome. Andrew, maybe give us, before we jump into drinking some delicious batch brew, give us a kind of a, in a nutshell, who are you, what do you do, and a little kind of a bio.
Okay. Well, my name is Andrew Pernicano. I'm out in Colorado. I work for Flair Espresso. It's actually something I haven't been able to, since we started, I haven't been able to tell people exactly what I do. We're still a small, kind of scrappy startup, so we all do a little bit of everything. I started out with the customer service and the socials, built those departments up, and then I've been able to sort of transition myself out and focus more on product development, brand. I like to say that I do a lot of the community work, so kind of community and education, I guess, is you'll find me more in Discord, on Facebook. I do still spend time on Instagram, that kind of thing, but trying to build the community around Flair, help customers still. I still support our service team and help Tanner Colson run the accounts. I'm sure you know that name.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So I think I started back 2017. I was just another guy looking for a way to make espresso on the go. And I had thought I'd seen everything until I came across the Flair Espresso Maker on Amazon. And I was like, what is this? I've never seen that. And it's not normal for me for something to slip by me. And I saw like a lot of good reviews. I was like, well, it's been here a little bit. Mm-hmm. And at that time I was doing kind of what you guys started up a couple of years ago, was trying to create a YouTube channel and be a YouTuber. And I wanted to start with things that I liked, which is like video, audio, and coffee. So I reached out and said, hey, looks like a cool product. Can I do a review on it? And pretty much that's where it went. I basically came in at the right time, right place at the right time sort of thing. Sergio Landau, the inventor, founder of the company, it was just him and one other guy in fulfillment. And they were, he designed what we call the Classic today, Classic Flair. And he designed that. And they were just, running everything by themselves. And I talked myself into a job after that. And now I'm here. So that's kind of like how I got going on with Flair and became part of that.
Wow, that's excellent.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it actually there's a lot of pieces that are starting to make more sense now with your video setup. I'm like,
that's what I was thinking.
You have a little bit of a background there.
Yeah, beautiful set. Like, I mean, well lit. I mean, this is incredible for anyone that watches the podcast, especially on Spotify. I feel like you really dialed into our aesthetic, except for we're shooting in the daytime. So folks, that's the difference here. But that's awesome. I love it. Lighting's so nice.
I was so excited. I thought we were going to be matched. And I was like, I was waiting for you guys, to cut the two, 3 angles together, and we would all be in the same kind of color scheme. But
I know. Yeah. I mean, you would be surprised. There's been episodes that we literally didn't start shooting till maybe 11 p.m. We go over our thought process, because we actually don't script these things. We just kind of talk, and then we're like, okay, I think it's time to record. Kind of thing. So sometimes it just takes a while to warm up, and sometimes we're recording close to midnight.
Yeah. And for folks listening also, it's literally called the Roaster Warm-Up Sessions podcast. It's the roaster warm-up sessions. This is what we're talking about when we're warming up the roaster. And Andrew, we'll dive into some roasting stuff later on, because I know you wanted to touch up on that slightly. So, but before we get too deep into the podcast, my drip coffee is cooling down. So let's pour some drip. Give this a taste.
Yeah, I brewed a little bit upstairs before we got here. What do you guys got?
Nice.
Yeah, we classic drip coffee. We're drinking a Colombian coffee, and it's roasted from Prodigal Coffee, which is We've had it on the podcast, but it's so delicious. Yeah. But also, is that what you're brewing up today?
Yeah, man. Same
Let's
one.
go.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it.
Same one. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, I bought. Oh, what do I have here? I've got something like 16 kilos of this stuff. I'm going to.
Oh, nice.
He was selling green along with his roasted coffee, and I needed a good source. And it's nice because they're local. They're Boulder, and I'm here in Golden, so I don't have to worry about shipping because that's expensive too. Right. But also like I don't have to really second guess the quality. So it was just nice to be able to have a local source. And actually, let's see, what do I have? No, I don't have. I bought 10 pounds of that. Sorry, I have 10 pounds of that I'm brewing for myself. But I also have a couple other 16 and 7 kilos that I purchased from him from some of the other greens as well.
That's excellent. What are you enjoying about this coffee? What are your kind of thoughts on it?
So, it was surprising, I guess, the first time that I tasted it because I was expecting something a little bit lighter from Scott and in general from what I heard. But it all made sense when then he posted that blog post about how he had to approach the Probat and go a little bit further with it. So I guess I find it, for me, I don't like too acidic coffees. I like I go between filters and espresso all day long. It's usually like espresso in the morning, filter in the day, or I flip-flop it. And so for me, and also I don't know if you know, but I'm at 8,200 feet. And so my water boils at 92. So nice. I find that my life is just a lot easier if I find a coffee that's a little bit easier to work with, and I don't try to push my roasting or buy coffee that's more on the light side of it. Right. I want to be able to work with what I have, which is lower water temperature than most people. So it's perfectly suited to what I like. I'd say it's pretty mellow. There's a little bit of acidity, but it's pretty muted that way. I think I was expecting maybe a little bit more, but the other thing is I'm doing this on a switch just now, and so like I don't remember what it was tasting like when I was doing it on the Clever before. Okay. But I was struggling with the switch earlier. I had a shot earlier, or not a shot, but I had a brew earlier that was pretty much a sour bomb because I didn't get the grind right on the switch, and so I'm trying to block that out of my mind.
Fair.
But I would just say stone fruits and a kind of a mild acidity. It's just a really pleasing, comfortable cup.
Yeah.
Well, what's your roast date on this batch?
I don't know if I have a date, to be honest, on mine. I picked this up at his house.
So perfect. Yeah.
I don't see a date, but I've had it for at least a few weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah. That's
probably the same coffee. Yeah. I think it's got might be the difference in our elevations and brewing and water that I'll go into it. But definitely heavy on, like, it's a rich, sweet coffee. Like the stone fruit is there. I'm picking up like a lot of vanilla. It's nice and mouth-watering. Like it's very juicy. It's still like, it's also something that we saw on the blog post that he had to kind of push it to avoid underdevelopment, which I was kind of surprised, but also not. But it's nice. Like I love exactly where this is, and we actually read this coffee on the color meter. Yeah. And on our color meter, naturally somehow our coffee preferences align within like 1 or 2 points on the color meter, and this coffee just sit right perfectly right where we like coffees. And so this felt like an exceptional, just like, this is a coffee we enjoy. So I don't know.
And we've had it multiple ways too. I think, Mark, you brewed it more on V60 than I did, but we also cupped it and then brewed it on batch brew a couple of times on the Breville batch brewer. So I think the interesting thing in the cupping, I mean, it was insanely complex. Like I was blown away. That was not my expectation either. Also knowing that it was probably developed a little bit more, I was like, man, it's probably going to be on the sweeter side, and maybe the complexity would be slightly diminished. But I also don't have a frame of reference. This coffee was the first coffee I've had from Prodigal. So, and then later on I tried the Gesha and some of the other ones. So I think right off the bat, this coffee impressed me. I was like, whoa, this exceeds my expectation. Even though like we've been like familiar with Scott for a while, we've spoken with him and we know that he's going to bring something exceptional. But for me, this was over the top. I mean, I even made a bold claim in that podcast, and I said this may be my favorite coffee of 2023.
Oh wow, it's early. It's early days.
Exactly.
I told them, I'm like,
Don't
you're
say
speaking
that.
too soon. Yeah, that's I hope to taste many great coffees this year. So, well, awesome. I mean, where do we start with this? There's so much that we can cover. So, tell me a little bit about maybe. You're doing more like product design. Is that what you're doing right now? Like product?
So I would say, Sergio, myself, there's another guy, Charlie. We are pretty much, when we decide we source from everybody in the company as to like what are good ideas, right? For the next product, that sort of thing. We have in the past come out with a new product, 1 or 2 per year. 2022 was kind of an exception. We didn't have any new products, but 2023, we do have a few lined up that we're working on. At least a couple should release, and working on a couple others as well. And so I would say I'm more embedded in the community and in the space than say Sergio is. He's an older dude. He does pretty well with social media and technology, that sort of thing. But I would say he's pretty far removed from the market. So that's kind of where I come in. I've been roasting coffee, been brewing coffee, specialty coffee. It wasn't specialty back 20 years ago, but I've been doing it for a while. And so I think I bring a lot of information also because of my being in the community and talking to people and trying to figure out what the next product should be, what people want to. So we come to him with some ideas as to what to do. We talk about feasibility, that sort of thing. He usually takes ideas from us, gets sort of like the main framework, then he goes away, disappears for a little while, and comes back with something and shows it to us, and then we sort of work back from there. But I would say that we collectively work on product ideas together because we're a small team and we can do that. And when it comes to development and testing, it goes back and forth. He'll make a couple. We'll both be testing simultaneously, now Charlie as well. And so we'll be working together in lockstep on improving the product to get it to a point where we can bring it to market. So I would say that I have a little bbit better bead on the market and what the desires are out there, because I see what everybody's asking for, oh, we just need this or we need that. And I don't know if you noticed, but we're mostly a mechanical, he's a mechanical engineer. So our products are manual, mechanical, that sort of thing. So you won't be seeing anything with heavy electronics. The 58 was definitely the first that we've done with some electronics, and it's pretty minimal. It's just to heat the cylinder. So yeah, whatever's in his wheelhouse as a mechanical engineer, that makes sense for espresso. Hopefully you'll see a product like that come from us slowly as we start to build out the line. We're getting to that point where I think we're pretty firmly done on espresso makers. And at this point, we'll start focusing on some of the other items, the accessories and things that you need to do the brewing that we've been leaning on other companies to produce.
Yeah, wow. That's exciting.
Yeah, I think that's super. That's for me, that's very intriguing to listen to and to kind of get an inside scoop on, because I don't know. I guess you don't get exposed to much of that when you're on this side of the industry, which is where we're focused more on brewing, getting people coffee beans, or we deal a lot with like coffee shops and people walking in as guests. So this is exciting. This is like new territory almost for me. And this also, to me, what comes to mind is like, man, if you want to work in coffee you don't always just have to be focused in on being a barista or roasting coffee. Like there are many, many fields. Like you're working in coffee just as much as we are, but you're in a completely different avenue. And that's exciting. I have a few questions about the Flair, but any thoughts, Serge?
A lot of thoughts. I'll completely agree with that. It's super exciting because I feel like for me, at least, I am always in a sense stuck in this bubble of the same old, like, you know, the espresso machine, the grinder, the classics that we talk about. And there's a lot of conversation around refining those things, whether it's, you know, changing how grinders retain heat or espresso machines and more automation that still leaves room for the barista, stuff like that. But then hearing this story and thinking about products that are innovative, like I literally feel, at least for me in my personal history with coffee, I feel like Flair is innovative in a similar way that when the first time I saw an AeroPress, it was innovative for me. Sorry that my phone just went off. That probably got caught. But anyway, so I feel like that train of thought is exciting to me. And also hearing that people in different industries and industries that are not necessarily just coffee, the practical classic coffee industry stuff, are joining into the industry and creating new things such as the Flair, and then working from that. That's
I would even say it's more like the kind of skill sets that you can find within coffee. Not that it's like a different industry. It's just you're utilizing different skill sets and specialties and fields. And I love that. Yeah. Well, all right. The Flair 58, you already hinted that, hey, it's not, that's probably the most tech that you guys have put in, even though it's minimal. It's kind of different from your guys' other pieces of equipment. Give us a little sneak peek. What did that look like? Especially since you're kind of in the market and kind of listening to what people are talking about. What sparked the idea of the Flair 58? What got you thinking in that direction? And give us a little inside scoop as to what that looked like.
Okay. Well, so it kind of comes back to Sergey was talking about how, you know, as I understand it, so Sergey, you work on bar, you're a manager at a coffee shop, but Mark, are you all, besides roasting, do you do other things in coffee as well?
No other things in coffee other than the mirror side. I do video stuff on other things. Yeah. So and
it's fun because in our videos, a lot of times, you know, people are like, I'm a barista and I don't have time for that. Like when people see like WDT and all that, like there's certainly a different style of brewing, or you have more time and leisure when you're brewing at home versus when you're on the bar. On the bar, you're more focused on replication or repeatability and consistency and quality, and you can't experiment as much because, you know, people are coming through the door and you just got to be turning out that same cup. And so we get to play a little bit more as a home brewer, as a home barista. We get to, you know, do our little WDT and stuff, things that don't maybe make sense. And what, you know, Sergey, I heard him say, like, you guys are more focused on like the heat and how's the shot pulling at the start of bar to the end of bar. Like it needs to be pulling at the same time and everything else. And if it's not, what's going on? Is that humidity? Is that the heat of the grinder? Like what's going on here? And so like us home brewers, we don't have that, right? Because we turn our grinder on just like once or twice a day and it cools down in between. So there's definitely a connection there, but also kind of two different worlds, how that goes. The Pro was our first attempt at like, you saw the Classic. Classic didn't have a pressure gauge. It was just a straight up lever, pull a shot, boom, done. And it made great espresso. But then, you know, that's where I kind of came in and started to tell Sergio, people want to like pressure profile. They want to see that gauge. They want, you know, and so I would say that's the kind of development and market understanding that I brought to him and been like kind of whispering into his ear, we need to do this, we need to do that. And we did that with the Pro. We made basically a larger reservoir, larger portafilter. You can put more coffee in. So it gives you more flexibility with your recipes. People that get the Classic sometimes like, I want a double shot. You know, I want my standard 2 ounces or 60 grams or whatever. And you can't do that on the smaller. So the Pro is meant to like bring that closer to the people that were really into this single double. I want the double. I want more coffee. And then still, you know, people want a portafilter, right? So like the 58 was sort of like as close as we could get to cafe experience, not just cafe quality, cafe experience. And, you know, we get that question a lot about how long does it take to pull a shot with the 58? And my response is, well, aside from pouring water in with a kettle, really not a whole lot more than it would be at a normal bar, because everything's the same, right? It depends on how much time you want to spend on the WDT and everything else, and how fast your grinder, like the grinders at your work are just like, boom, done. You got your dose in the basket and you're moving. And some people's grinders take 15, 30, 40 seconds, whatever. But if you take that aside, the time difference between pulling a shot on a 2-group or 3-group machine versus like the 58, it's pretty close, because the whole workflow, you still got a portafilter, you knock that out, it's a little bit easier to work with. So we were looking for a product that felt more familiar and comfortable for, say, a barista or somebody who's a professional. We wanted to prove that we could do that as well. And so I think the 58 there's always this discussion about, well, does it taste the same as, you know, the coffee that I'd get at a cafe? And yes and no. I mean, yes, if you do it all right, it could, but then that bed depth, right? The pucks, like if you have a really tall puck versus a shallow puck, that's really where the differences come in. Aside from, you know, if net everything else the same. And so we wanted to get that 58 millimeter basket, because that's truly the only way to fully replicate what you're going to taste in a cafe. You could do that by dosing down, say on a classic or a pro. You can dose down and try to get that same puck height, puck depth, and that's going to allow you to grind finer. But with the classic and with the pro, you're grinding a bit coarser with those portafilters, because that taller puck, more resistance. And it's not until you get a 58 millimeter portafilter that you can grind finer and still, you know, pull your shot in the times you want. So I think that was sort of the impetus there, is like, where else can we go? We've kind of taken care of it with the classic and the pro as far as, you know, people at the home level, but we wanted to see what we could do with this. And we're seeing people use it in like some of the best restaurants in the world. In fact, one that just won the #1 restaurant for 2022 uses the 58. Wow. They have a few, but they use the 58 to serve espresso to their customers. We see it all over Asia. They'll be using the 58 inside these like smaller cafes. They're not doing the volume that you probably are, but they're using the 58 because it's just easier, cheaper for them to have products like that than to go get the big 2-3 groups. Probably harder to get in to their countries as well. So I think that was it. It was just you know, wanting to see how close we could get to that same exact mouth profile and flavor profile and everything else that you get from a cafe with our products.
Yeah, I think for me, hearing you say that makes me think, not only are y'all thinking about replicating like maybe a similar flavor experience and like more of a tasting experience with that, but you're also, for me, what I like about the 58 is that it still holds the intimate connection to what Flair brings to the surface. It's not going to be a cafe experience, or if it is even in the cafe, it's a whole different experience than if I would, you know, pull a shot of espresso with the Linea. So I like that, because that's something that I enjoy about using different brew methods, whether I'm at home, whether I'm in the cafe, is that it just brings a different connection, one with the coffee, but also if you're using that to serve a guest, it's a whole different experience. I actually played around with the Flair 58 in the cafe, and the funny thing is I set it up next to the POS host area and was pulling shots. And, well, not during business hours, to be honest. But the reality is that footprint, it fit right at my pour-over bar. And the whole experience, Mark was hanging out there and we were chatting, and the POS system is there. That's what I was thinking in my mind, is like, this brings an intimate connection, not only with the coffee, because it takes a little bit more intention, but also the connection with the person you would or can serve with that kind of machine. So I like that. To me, that's very important, because it's that crossover, that in between the simplicity of a home barista and then also the insane intention behind pulling a shot at home to the actual flavor profile of the espresso being so similar to the cafe style. So
it seems like
it's
that's
great.
where they're going, right? A lot of the commercial machines, they're making it where it just kind of comes out of the bar as opposed to this
like the
big
mod bar.
box. So you're not just like trying to see the customer and look around them. So that's where things are going. They're trying to do that, get the machine out of the way
100%.
so that we're making bigger connection with our guests and our customers.
Yeah, I just helped design a little coffee cart, and that was one of the things. Not only did I want it lower because it's easier for someone to brew that's, at a different height, but it's also removing the barrier between the person that you're serving. And that is, that's crucial to the cafe experience because, in my opinion, like hospitality should always be paramount. And then the quality of coffee comes into that method or into that idea of hospitality.
Yeah, I think
That's
one
a big
thing
balance
that
for
I
you too, though, right?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I think yeah, it's all right. You're good. I think one thing that I really enjoyed about the Flair 58, just using the little bit of it. It was like my first time using anything that's lever or semi even mechanical, but it also the feel of having like a 58 millimeter portafilter.
Yeah.
And even that like little heating element of the group head felt like a very it was such a unique experience where I'm like, I kind of feel like because I used to work behind bar, like I kind of feel like this is like an espresso machine, but it's also like oddly like mechanical and manual that felt actually kind of good and intriguing. Like, and like for those, for folks listening on the podcast, we're pretty basic with gear. Like we're like, give me a V60 or, V60 is like time and, like tried by time, and it can produce a really great cup, and you don't need much more. And so most of the time, like our approach to gear is like, unless it's really groundbreaking, the tools that we have already can go a far ways. But when using the Flair 58, it was very actually inspired me a lot, because I'm like, this is a piece of tool that's kind of different than anything I've used before, and I'm kind of intrigued to see what's capable and what's possible on this little like tiny little footprint, but it also feels very, I can't even put words to it. Yeah. I don't know. I love that. I love that experience. So
with somebody who posted in one of the like Home Barista Aficionado, they're like, what's the most overrated thing in coffee? And I said, my response was the gear, because really it starts with the coffee, right? You have to have good quality coffee. And the rest of it doesn't, like, some of my best cups of coffee came from the cupping table. Like, and that's as basic as it gets to brewing, right? The grinder is super important to get a good grind on that too. But ultimately, like just an immersion brew there, and you didn't need even a brewer, so to speak. You just water, coffee, and it's so dead simple. And that's probably why, like, it's easy to repeat. You generally don't have issues with astringency and other things that come from, a clogged V60 or whatever. So really it starts with the coffee, and that's all you need to make a good cup.
I really resonate with that because I spent a decent amount of time in Indonesia, and majority of the time when folks are enjoying coffee there, not in cafes, but maybe, at some older folks' house, just sitting on the floor, it's the method where, I don't remember the exact name, but they just put finely ground coffee in a mug, pour water, and let it sit. It's literally cupping, like, except they're not slurping with
coffee.
they're not slurping with like a spoon. They're just sipping it until they touch the grounds. And then there were some old folks, like these specifically like older men who are like, intense. I don't know why, but they would sip it all the way with the coffee grounds. And I'm like, why? Yeah, I did not get that.
Maybe it makes you regular. I don't know.
Exactly. I guess. I mean, shoot, it was wild. But yeah, I agree. I think a lot of the times we overlook the most important things because we're fascinated by the flashy new gear and all of that. And for me, my first experience with the Flair, I believe, was with a Classic. I think it was a Classic back in 2020. During the initial lockdowns of COVID, Camber Coffee here in Bellingham had a at-home latte art throwdown, and you couldn't use anything like electronic, or you couldn't use anything powered. You had to do everything by hand. So I literally used, I thought I was going to use the mocha pot. Didn't get any results, and was talking to a buddy of mine. He's like, dude, I have a Flair. And I'm like, yo, what's that? So he showed it to me. I borrowed it and just used it in the competition and absolutely loved it. And I think what I really enjoy about the Classic is, again, it's even like simpler. Like I like the element of taking off the chamber and warming it on my fellow kettle. I thought that was cool. I thought that was niche. I thought that was unique. So now using the 58, I'm like, whoa, it's doing it on its own. Like, that's wild. Completely, like, I think that little element of it completely blew me away. And of course, the gauge is super helpful. It's like, I would play around with just eyeballing it, looking at my timer, and just kind of gauge it with my arm pressure and stuff like that. But I like the simplicity. It literally feels like it grounds me to what is more important. And the gear is important, but the coffee is so much more important. I just said more important. How many times? Got to find a different word. Yeah.
You said the word connected a few times, and really, like, yeah, you have your hand on the handle, right? Like, you're connected all the way through to the, normally with other things, you just push a button and then you stand back and let it do its thing. But this, you're fully in control and you're connected all the way through. So it's definitely...
That's exactly the part that intrigued me, is like when I, messed around with the 58, is that I'm like, this feels nice that it's mechanic, like the raw mechanics of pulling a shot of espresso was right there, right in front of me. Yeah. And it was very simple. And I don't know, I really enjoyed that. But, we've had a couple episodes where we also love home barista, the aficionado, espresso aficionado folks, because I think they drive a lot of innovation and a lot of intrigue in the industry. Even though, as much as we just said, hey, let's simplify it down, at the same time, there's a lot of good in the innovation. Yep. And being somebody who's, kind of in the market, I love that you're even, having these conversations in these groups or threads and forums. What are some of the observations that you're seeing in those groups, and where do you feel like coffee's growing on a home level? Are there any interesting trends that you've noticed, or what are the conversations that you're having with folks?
So I would say, you talked about innovation, but I would also say innovation in equipment, but also innovation in techniques and more understanding of coffee. So back to the whole, like, you're a professional, right? You're on the bar. You don't have time to play around. You're like, I just need this to be repeatable. I just need to keep the store open. People need to keep coming through the door. And by the time you get home, you're done. I know a lot of baristas, they don't have anything to brew with at home, because why? Like, you go to the cafe, you brew when your shift opens, you're drinking all day. Like, so you don't have that opportunity. It's the home brewers, in my opinion, that are actually leading the way in techniques. And like, most of what you see in some of these papers starts from like a group like Espresso, the EAF Discord. Are you on there? I don't know. But those guys are just like wicked smart engineers, scientists, and just, they have time and they have passion, and they're doing really cool and crazy things, and a lot of tests. They're spending a lot of time testing. I feel like you see more innovation in the brewing from those places than you do anywhere else. And the EAF, I would say, is a lot like not that, I don't want to upset anybody, but Home Barista, home/barista.com, which was, where Jim Seven and all these people, Scott Rayo, and everyone spent a lot of time on, 20 years ago. I would say that same sort of energy and passion and innovation that I saw there maybe 15, 20 years ago, I'm seeing on Discord and some of these other hard to find, not open to sort of the public unless you get an invite. There's some, there's that Hog. You might remember the Barista Hustle. We're working on. It's called the Hog.
Yes.
Porky Press. And so you see that now. Swark Designs created you know, his version of what he thought that they were working on. But, you know, even when he put that out there, his explanation of what it did was recently sort of debunked or proven that maybe that's not really what's going on here. It's the way that the coffee is sort of settling, that this is doing. It's not necessarily creating these channels through the better coffee. It's allowing the coffee to sort itself into a denser, I don't know the scientific term, but you know, in a composition, so that it's actually able to get a more even. But that doesn't seem to come from. And if it does, you know, there's obviously big companies with big R&D budgets, and they are doing cool things, but that's going into their product and their machines. And for the guys that are like trying to brew on bar or at home, a lot of that's coming from within the community, I think, these days. Because these people are just, they've got time, they're passionate, they're smart, and they really want to do it for the sake of improving that cup, you know, as opposed to like dollar signs. There's a lot of things that I've seen that are in development that never really make it out, and also like that maker community, a lot of guys just, they design something cool and they're like, here it is, go ahead, print it. You know, I don't want it, I'm not trying to make money from this, I just want everybody. A good example is the People's WDT tool. You know, you seen that from John Kim?
No, I don't think I have.
It's that, well, you have let me see if I can find it real quick. This guy right here.
Yeah, I have.
So, I mean, basically, it's just someone who, it's like a perfect tool, simple. He designed it, you know, it wasn't truly his creation. He saw what was out there, and he designed something similar that was easy to print, and everybody could go do it with some needles. And he just wanted it out there for everyone to make better coffee, and he didn't want to sell it. You know, he's just like, oh, it's over here. And if you are going to try to use my design, you can't sell it for more than $10, because he doesn't want anyone to get ripped off. He just wants people to make better coffee, better espresso. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing you see in these communities and groups, is people just want to make better coffee and want other people to make better coffee. Super supportive, super helpful. Yeah, so as far as like what I see and the kind of, it's more me lurking. I don't have as much time as I'd like to be part of the conversation these days. Yep. I'm supposed to, you know, this is my studio. I'm supposed to be making videos in here, but like I just have a hard time finding time to do what I want to do. So yeah, I would say I'm more just lurking and listening and chiming in and helping in the community. And there's other people that are really like pushing coffee further. And you don't even know their names. You just know their handles, you know?
Yes.
You don't even like know who they really are in real life, which is cool, because that just shows like they're not looking for fame or attention or notoriety. They just,
Dang, that's, I'm probably going to be re-listening to everything you just said when I'm going to be editing the podcast. I think those are insights. Well, first off, I totally understand by you saying you don't have enough time. Like that's the struggle for us as well. I'm like, oh man, I almost have 2 full-time jobs, and I'm trying to spend a little time on Discord and trying to keep my ears open on these random forums, you know. But everything that you said was just so exciting to me, because it's stuff that I gave me a fresh perspective on all these home baristas and that whole kind of subculture or that niche culture of people. And I think that's so fascinating that they're just like coming up with these fun, interesting gadgets and just giving them away and for the sake of just innovation, and just building that kind of that community, the culture. And that's just fascinating to me. And it also gives me like, it gives me hard like startup vibes. Yeah. Like it's like all the like, I don't know, that groundwork, the trench work of making a startup. That's what that felt like. Of just like, man, you're just in here just trying to, you know, communicate with other people and learn from other people, but also offer what you have to offer. I think that's fascinating. Yeah. So
it also reminded me of, there was this one time I was talking to Jonathan Gagney before he wrote the book, before he was big. He was still pretty popular, but it was in that
Who?
Jonathan Gagney. You got me. Oh yeah, exactly. Right. So I was chatting with him. Now I'm going to laugh at myself. And I remember asking him, I don't know what it was regarding what element that he was discovering.
I just got to tell you, the Chat GPT doesn't know who Jonathan is.
Really?
So that's
Oh,
why.
that's devastating. It will soon. Chat GPT
That's a
4
good
will.
thing. Yeah. But I asked him, I was like, hey, how would I replicate this on bar? And he just laughed. He was like, you don't. And I was like, oh, that's excellent. That makes so much sense.
Took the pressure off of you.
Yeah. And I was like, good. I'm not going to try to replicate this puck prep on bar. So I think that's excellent. And to see people like Jonathan and others who are so passionate about coffee and are innovating the brewing side, but also out of that is out of those ideas, gear gets birthed, and like the AAA and other brewing devices that get birthed out of the new ideas that are coming out of these niche groups of folks.
I think this is also kind of bringing this whole conversation almost full circle, because I think what I'm inspired by is like what you talked about in the beginning about, you know, the founder being this like mechanical engineer who started off, and I love that. And I think we need more of that in the coffee industry. I think of like people that have expertise and skills in other areas that where they can come into these communities and to this like coffee culture and offer what they have that is kind of unheard of before. Like the fact that Jonathan is this like astrophysicist, the fact that we're seeing more chemists and biologists and scientists join the conversation is extremely I think beneficial. And stuff like, you know, the Flair comes out of, you know, these mechanical engineers who are just like, you know, whether they're trying to either solve an issue or create something that's not been around before, I think is phenomenal. So, yeah.
I think to take that another step further, you know, Arabi, I don't even know how to say the name, but you know, the makers of the AirPress,
right?
It was, you know, they came from a completely different space, and same thing with Flair. Sergio Landau was like biomedical engineering, completely. And so two guys that just wanted to, they're like, well, it shouldn't be that hard, you know, like they understand the mechanics and the physics of things. And so it's like, we should be able to make it cheap and affordable. I think they both had that same, they just like, you know, the one wanted to make the best coffee you can make for the least price, you know, it's like what, $50 or I don't know what for an AirPress. And then, you know, Sergio did the same sort of thing for espresso. What's the cheapest we can make a good cup of espresso? And they also didn't have any background or preconceived notions of what it should look like or what it needed to be. It was just kind of like, we just want to get to the end cup, right? And so that's the other cool thing about having these people that are, that just want, also the guy that made 9 Baristas, same thing, you know, didn't come from coffee. He's an aerospace engineer or something like that, making jet rockets or I don't know what. But, you know, these guys that just, they're super talented, they know what they're doing, and they just wanted to make something that yielded a good cup. And they weren't really held back by what it needed to look like or what it should be or any of that. They just got to the end product. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I think for me, who is completely submerged in the coffee world, my friend Lee, she always inspires me by saying, or asking me the question, like, what are you learning outside of the industry? And I think that's super important, like to look outside and of what you're familiar with and to be inspired by, I mean, whether that's like in the like video and cinema world that you're experiencing, or you know, our dad is like super into like fixing and repairing cars and stuff like that. So learning from those kind of things and understanding like different elements that we can impart into what we do regularly, like for me, coffee.
Yeah. Like realistically, I can't wait to be editing this because I technically listen to this podcast over multiple times as I'm editing through it. And so this will be fun to this will be fun to re-listen to. But as we wrap up, I want to talk about roasting a little bit, and then I also want to give me a sneak peek. I know you can't share maybe everything, but what gets you excited about Flair in this upcoming year? You said you guys are working on some fun little maybe accessories or other things. You don't have to say them, but maybe share a little bit about what you're looking forward to.
All right. Well, I think I already tipped you off a little bit. Hopefully there'll be a day where you'll just be able to make espresso with all Flair products, and you won't need anything else from anyone else. So
Got it.
if you think about what it takes to make espresso, what you're using with your 58 or what you used with Classic, that's kind of the goal, is to have those. So we're working on some of the accessories, some of the things that you would need to do that. Also, one thing that we have been working on for many years, and I've said it so many times that I can say it again here, we are working on a steamer, and hopefully we'll finally have that by the end of the year, something, or at least close to having that. It's just something that we kept saying we're going to do, and it kept getting pushed back by other projects. But now that we have the espresso makers, like I said, pretty much locked, and we're happy with what we have. We have a full lineup, 4 or 5 models at this point. So we're going to now focus on those other products that you can use, making espresso, making lattes, that sort of thing. So that's pretty much what we're working on now. Not obviously all of that in 1 year, but kind of working on things of that nature. So that's, and when you say what gets me like up in the morning or what gets me excited, it's being able to do that. Like I've often thought about working for, what it would be like to work for another company. And a lot of them are so structured that like you're got to stay in your lane. Like this is what you do, just do that. And we don't need your input on these other things. So it's nice to work in a small company where, you have the boss's ear, you can like give an idea or suggestion and it can be developed into a product. Like that's what's probably the coolest thing about working with startups and small companies, is not having that top-down structure where you don't have an input, you don't have a say. We still have our team meetings get bigger and bigger, but like every other Wednesday or so, we all sit down, do a Zoom call, and everybody gets a chance to communicate, with the general manager who's the president, and he gets to ask us what's on our mind or what new things are going on, and likewise, so that's probably the coolest thing about working for a company like Flair that's still small enough to have that. It comes a point like Fellow, right? Like you get big enough, you just can't. You can't. At least I don't think they do. Like it seems like they have 3 or 4 people in every department. Like whether it's marketing or e-com or whatever. I just feel like having just one person that does one job allows us to sort of all work together as a team collectively. So that's cool. I was going to say, as far as like the roasting side, I wanted to ask you some questions. So before we cut off, make sure we save some time for that, because I want to pick your brain.
Yeah. So I mean, that's great. I think that spurs a lot of conversation, because I think that's the challenge that I've been thinking about, is like, at some point, if you're doing something right, you're going to be growing. But then how do you maintain a lot of the intimacy or that same energy or that same tight-knit team as you grow? Like the thing that made you grow, how do you maintain that, whether it's product-wise but also team-wise? And that's, I think that gets really challenging. But I'm enjoying I'm enjoying the fact that it's just me and Sergey right now. I'm cherishing these days, even though they're really challenging, and the amount of stuff that we have to deal with is like a lot for, just 2 people. But I'm definitely valuing these moments, because chances are probably not going to be this way, for forever. That is. So I don't know. Enjoy the small team vibes while Flair has them.
I hear, while we're talking about you guys, I was asking Tanner if he had any questions or anything he wanted me to ask you, and he did. He said you guys were the first ones, I guess, that you could say that believed in him and sent him a bag of coffee. He said the first roaster that sent him one of those, which was, he's super honored. But he and I are both, saying and discussing, like, you guys have such a devotion to like excellence in making everything, like from your podcasts, you've been hammering those. Like, I don't know anyone else that's put in the time you guys put in and you make the video, and then you also do the audio version of it, but your videos are like just beautiful, like really good. Obviously Mark enjoys it the way I enjoy, like setting up the stage and getting all that in. But yeah, like you guys do just quality work in everything you do. And the other cool thing is like super humble. Like Tanner's question was like, I don't see them pitch or selling? It's like, how does that all fit in, and how are they able to have all the time that they do to put in to the production and the coffee roasting and everything else and support the business? It just seems like you guys are working tirelessly, for years and super committed. But we're just both in awe of the time that you guys put into this. And your podcast, to me anyways, my comment was, it seems like almost like therapy sessions. Like you guys get a chance to sort of like break down, deconstruct the last week or the challenges you just went through. And it's awesome to have you guys share with us like what you're going through, because as I told you privately, like I'm looking at super small scale, like roasting for my community, roasting for my neighborhood, stocking shelves at my local grocery store. And so I'm looking into what does that take? And so I started watching some of your videos again, and because I remember your 3 mistakes that we wish we knew, or not 3 mistakes, but 3 things we wish you knew before we started a business. So like I better watch that again, make sure it's like you guys are super honest and share with that, but it's also good, I imagine, for the two of you guys, because you're brothers, because you're doing this, like it's good to sort of decompress, break it down, sort of bounce off, sort of just open up to yourself and maybe say it aloud can help as well. But it's been great sort of like just watching you guys grow the business and make decisions and reflect on the good ones and the bad ones, and make goals for yourself, and then, come out and try to make them. So it's been fun to watch. You guys are doing a great job.
Well,
wow.
That means a lot.
That means a lot. Speaking of therapy sessions,
I know
that was it right there.
that you just spoke to our hearts. That meant a lot.
And the really refreshing thing though also is that's the heart behind it, like everything what you're saying, and I'm glad that's being communicated in a way where you're picking up on that. And so my fear is always like, man, what if people are not getting this heart behind that we have for doing these things? What if this is just being lost? So when you're saying that, that's like, oh, okay, so that is getting across. And at 100%, you summarized our podcast very well, and kind of, I mean, everything we do really. So
I think one of my fears with the podcast is like, sometimes after an episode, I'm like, what did I even say? Like, why can't I be more professional? Like, you know what I mean? And because we do carry that vibe, it's just Mark and I most of the time, unless we have a guest. And it is special, but sometimes it's scary because the vulnerability, sometimes I feel like when I deliver that on a public platform, you do think about it. What will it look like a few years down the road? Like, I hate scrolling down my Instagram feed, but I know I need to, because I need to get a reality check of where I came from. But there is that like scary element of vulnerability of being kind of, I don't even know how to put what we do into words, because we're just being ourselves. But we're also, our listenership is growing. So I sometimes forget, like, oh wait, I'm not just recording this for Mark and I. People are actually like paying attention. So there's that tension of like being a little scared, but also knowing like this is just who I am.
Yeah. So the question I have for you guys about roasting, since I'm just kind of getting into this, and I'm just roasting for my neighborhood, stocking shelves locally. So I'm not, I got my bags. I got to figure out, like, I got a name. I got to, figure out a label, but I'm not going to try to roast outside. So I don't know if this is something that other states have as well, but we have like a cottage, what is it? The cottage something law, but basically it allows me to just roast for my neighborhood and not actually have to do it in a commissary or anything. I can do it in my kitchen. And so that's all I'm looking to do here, and trying to design a roast that is going to hit everybody in a positive way. Like, obviously, when I first tested some profiles, my wife, who she went from a place of like, enjoying Starbucks to now enjoying like specialty and a little bit of acidity. She's like, this just tastes roasty. I don't like it. And I'm like, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about, the people here. And I don't think a lot of the people in my community that I'm roasting for want that acidity. They want it to to be more of what they're comfortable with, which is somewhere between like Starbucks and diner, and maybe they probably go to, I don't know, like a local coffee shop, but it's generally not, they're probably not getting specialty out there. And so that would probably taste like a defect to them, right? To have the acidity, they probably call that sourness or something. Yeah, so just like, how do you figure out, and you talked about that earlier about, you have a certain, a couple numbers on the Actron scale or whatever that all your coffee comes out to somewhere in between there, and trying to figure that out, like how to roast for the most for the most enjoyment for everybody else, not yourself. Because I don't know, maybe you are roasting for yourself. Maybe what you're roasting for everybody else is what you would roast for yourself. Is that the case? Because I don't think I have that luxury here, and yeah, trying to figure it out.
That is a really challenging conversation to have, and it's something that we're actually always talking about. And the challenge here is that that I think what will help is not thinking about how do I find a roast that everybody likes, because that's almost non-existent. Because interesting conversation, like I was over the holidays, we were hanging out with some family. I brewed them some coffee, and like an older lady tried my coffee, and she's like,
talking about your mom?
No. I'm not.
You said burn for the family and the older lady.
No. My mom actually loves our coffee. She's a fan. She also went from Starbucks to this. She's like, I'm not going back. But anyways, she tried the coffee, and she's like, oh man, this is so bitter. And I'm like, okay. And then there's another gentleman tries the same exact coffee, and is like, oh, why is this so sour? And to me, I was like, nice. Now how do I fix that when those are opposite sides of the spectrum?
Yep.
And so
you don't know who actually identified it correctly and who didn't,
Exactly. And they're to a certain extent, if you really want to go far, they were both correct. It's just their perception and their background of flavor experiences resulted in a certain comment.
Yep.
And that's why I'm saying, like, thinking, I think, less in terms of like, how do I please everybody with one single roast? I think the smart thing would do is how do I have one or two coffees that I roast that maybe that really appeal to different people in your neighborhood, whether that's the person who's working remotely, or is it a little more coffee fanatic enthusiast that can enjoy something lighter, and then doing something a little darker, more developed, that's going to appeal to them a little more. I don't know, that's my take on it. I think the concept in those places, I think that we don't really do this for us, but the concept of having like a filter roast and an espresso roast, I think allows you to please more people so that you can direct them towards each coffee. Thoughts, Serge?
Oh, a lot of thoughts, because that's a big question. When it comes to preference, you're going to meet so many different people, even within a small town. Like, that was at a table, so it's at some point you're going to have to make a call, and that call is also going to be heavily preference based to what you like, whether that's even like a ultra Nordic roast or like borderline second crack dark roast. Like, you're going to have to make a call why you're willing or not willing to roast something like that. And then even before that, the coffees that you source are also going to dictate that, because I want to say, like, there's some coffees that we are sourcing that are on the expensiver side when it comes to green cost. Like, it wouldn't be wise to roast that coffee ultra light, medium, and then second crack dark. It wouldn't make sense. So we do source a diversity of coffees for the different demographic, but we also have a certain kind of, I guess, personal value in place where we're like, you know what, if we wouldn't drink this coffee, we probably don't want to serve it, but we also want to make sure that we do meet people where they're at. So it's a tough tension. Like, there are some people who always ask us for a dark roast, and we have to navigate that conversation. Like, I guess, on like person to person basis, and be like, okay, why would we say yes and why would we say no? And like, what are we trying to do that? And then is there a way that we can take someone to experience the full dynamic experience of coffee from like light to dark or from dark to light? What can we do to that with that? So yeah, I think I think it really comes down to knowing your demographic and then staying true to the conviction of what do you want to do and how do you want to approach people who are drinking different roast styles.
Great.
So it's a super personal question, and I think there's no right or wrong answer on this one. It's like I understand. I think in our circles we always talk about light roast or maybe these complex coffees. But if someone is just looking to like, brew a mocha pot, like why wouldn't you offer a much more developed coffee for them or something of sorts that just hits the spot?
Yeah. That's kind of where I'm leaning towards at the moment, for sure. I'm also only going to just do one coffee right now because I don't know how well they're going to sell. And because I'm going to ask more money because it's good coffee. I'm buying it from Sky.
Exactly.
So, I don't want to have too many offerings out there. So I think I'm probably going to go more developed for now and just kind of see how that plays out. And if it starts selling, then maybe have another offering and bring it back a little bit.
I think that's actually a very interesting point that you're making that we don't talk about, but we've thought about. Back when we started about having too many coffees on the menu. I think for young roasters, sometimes it's easy to go with thinking, man, I'm starting this roasting company. I want to have I want to have an Ethiopian, a Kenyan, a Guatemalan, a Colombian. Ooh, Peru's also tasting good this year. Or, and I'm like, start very slim. Like we launched our first 4 months, I think, when we launched, we had one coffee on the menu. Yeah. And it was a Colombian, and then I believe at some point we had a Colombian and a Guatemalan. Yeah. But I think that is already I think it's, in my opinion, it's a smarter approach, and it actually helps you handle stuff like demand so much better and feasible, especially if you're starting like a roasting company. That's in my opinion. Of course, depending on how much capital you have. Right. But if you're really starting off small, I think don't worry about having hundreds or every origin possible on your menu. Yeah.
I remember you and I having that conversation. Yeah. In the very beginning when we're like just thinking about buying green. I think you just had a wild experience with the Ethiopian coffee. Back in like early 2019, right when I moved to Masha Coffee. Yeah. And we were on that hype of like, man, we're going to start out with a bang, maybe like an Ethiopian. Yeah. But we realized like, no, like that's not where we're at. We need to find a coffee that now we're creating labels for that language and like timeless and modern and eternal. But I think what we did is we started with a coffee that to us spoke timeless. Like this coffee would please us and make us happy, but it would also like probably please my mom and probably please our neighbor, because we at that point we didn't have our demographic dialed because we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do. So with having like very small amount of coffees on our menu or even just one, it gave us that opportunity to experiment, to trial and error, not with our like sales and not to put our living on basically at risk. We were just experimenting with our flavor palettes and figuring out what we liked in a roast style and a coffee preference.
And what are you roasting on?
So I've got the Bullet. That's what I'm going to be doing these on. I have a few different roasters, but yeah, for this it'd be 2 bags at a time, 2 12-ounce bags at a time on a Bullet. And so for the foreseeable future, I think I prefer air roasting over this conduction and drum, but it is what I got, and I'll keep using it for now. And if I decide to expand and things are going well and I can go with it, I'll probably move to some sort of an air roaster.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's
Makes
great.
sense.
You guys went straight up and picked up Like, is that a Diedrich or what do you have?
Yep. It's a Diedrich, yeah.
Did you just go right out and buy a Diedrich, or did you start like more modest like me with something smaller? And
we just kind of went for it. And
who had to sell their car to get that?
Well, literally.
Well, actually, you're not far off.
You're not far.
Listen,
Yep.
I was saving up for a new car, and it was like,
roaster,
and then
roaster.
Exactly.
Search
and then
roaster.
and 4 months later, it was a roaster. Yeah. So yeah, I emptied my savings and maxed out my credit cards to get the bare minimum in, and I mean the bare minimum was an IR12 kilo, Diedrich. So, and the concept there was like, we don't want to be buying another roaster in a year or 2 years because we've maxed out capacity. We want something that's going to scale with us, that's going to grow with us. It's going to create a long-term kind of plan that can scale with us and be good for the long run.
I mean, with all of that said, I was also in a weird spot. I just moved back to Bellingham, and my wife and I got married, and a month later we moved back to Bellingham. So I had nothing. Like, we literally sold everything. So I really had nothing to offer. So Mark's car fund was literally like, well, if you do that, we have a roasting company. Like, I'll roll with that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So
that's commitment. I mean, yeah, you can't just let it sit there. You got to get to it.
Exactly. I think the other thing is we were both semi-familiar with the Diedrich. Mark specifically roasted on one at the previous cafe that he worked at. And then when I moved, I was sitting in on the roast. So we both understood kind of the basic function of a Diedrich. So it was, and I think we had one experience, we've shared this experience on the podcast, is when it broke, we had no idea what to do. Mark, just share the story, because I think the story is very important to deciding what roaster you're going to buy.
Yeah. I'll keep it short because we need to wrap this thing up. But so we, the Diedrich had some fan issues, and my dad, he's like a handyman, can
Mechanic.
literally do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was like, can you take a look at this? Went to the roastery, took a look, literally took him like 2-3 minutes, and he's like, yep, this is pretty simple. The parts are just there. You just need to swap this out, put it in. Very easy to install, and it's going to work just fine. And that was like incredible. Like, for somebody who has never seen my dad has never seen a roaster, but when he can come in and with his prior knowledge, just find the solution, was like, oh, okay, that's something that as a roaster you need to keep in mind when stuff goes wrong and you have, orders stacked up, wholesale accounts depending on you. Let's hope you can get up and running or have a backup solution, and to know that I can just, if something goes wrong, there's a good chance I might be able to fix it. Maybe not everything. Mm-hmm. That speaks a lot. So
yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's a good point. Also, access probably to replacement parts, and maybe some of the roasters, the more exotic ones, are from a different country, might be a little bit harder to get in. So like it could set you back a few weeks, maybe a month, depending on, we just saw the supply chain crumble, a couple of years ago. So like, it's all good things to know, is like, if this broke, could I fix it? If it broke, would I be able to get parts, and
yeah, that's,
for sure.
That's a huge underrated thing to think about. But sweet. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for jumping on the Coffee Roaster Warm-Up Sessions podcast. It was such a good time to chat with you. Do you have any last final parting words with our guests, with our listeners?
Parting words. I don't, other than if you're serious about community and learning more about coffee, and you want a place that has very little ego and all passion, that I think you guys are there too, the Discord, Espresso Aficionado on one of us. I'm not quite sure how you find it. If you just Google it, I think you need to get an invite, right, for these kind of things. So you have to ask for an invite on Reddit or someplace like that. But I'd love to see more people in the community and being part of that and sharing their experiences, and also sharing their wisdom. It's always hard as you're just kind of coming into it, like knowing how much coffee to use and what course setting and all this. And so it's good to have a place like that where people are super helpful, and just willing to bring people up and give, improve their coffee making. So it's a fun community to be on. So I guess that's it. Probably send more people to coffee groups and communities so we can improve coffee together.
Yep. Apart from that, what's the best way to stay in contact?
So flairespresso.com is the website for Flair Espresso, and then our Instagram is Flair Espresso Maker. And we also have a YouTube channel, Flair Espresso, and Facebook, Flair Espresso, and a TikTok, Flair Espresso.
Let's go.
And so myself and Tanner Colson, if you send us a DM, drop us in. It's one of us answering. So if you have questions or you want to learn more, best way to do it is hit us up in the DMs and follow those channels.
Cool.
Incredible. Well, thank you once again for
thank you.
Having this conversation. Yeah, it was definitely fun. But friends, thank you so much if you're listening this far into the podcast. Really appreciate it. Hopefully you walked away with some value. I know I did. You can share this with home barista fanatic. Send this to them. Tell them they have to listen to this.
Yep.
So, but that being said, folks, thank you so much for joining us once again on an episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Up Sessions podcast. And always remember, reflect what's good.